Electricity is not a luxury. A family can skip a restaurant meal, it can delay a vacation, it can put off a purchase for another month. But it cannot simply stop using power. That is why the electric bill matters. In April 2026, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, electricity prices were 6.1% higher than a year earlier. Headline consumer inflation over the same period was 3.8%. Electricity was rising faster than the broader inflation rate. And for households, that kind of inflation is hard to avoid. Power runs the refrigerator, the lights, the air conditioner, the water heater, the internet, the phone charger, the home office, and the systems that keep daily life moving. When electricity becomes more expensive, it is not just another optional cost. It is the price of staying connected to modern life. For many Americans, inflation is easiest to notice at the gas pump or in the grocery aisle. But another pressure arrives more quietly. It comes once a month, inside the utility bill. And by 2026, that bill was becoming harder to ignore. The broader energy picture was already under strain. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the overall energy index rose 17.9% over the 12 months ending in April 2026. Gasoline was part of that story. So were other energy costs. But electricity carries a different kind of weight. It is not a cost households choose once in a while. It is the background system of everyday life. The Energy Information Administration expected residential electricity prices to rise about 5% in 2026 and to keep rising in 2027 at a slower pace. EIA also forecast the average U.S. residential electricity price at 18.2 cents per kilowatt hour in 2026, nearly 5% higher than in 2025. The numbers sound technical. The meaning is not. Power is getting more expensive at a time when many families are already paying more for food, housing, insurance, gasoline, and debt. And unlike a price tag in a store, the electric bill usually arrives after the power has already been used. A household turns on the air conditioner during a hot month because the home has to stay livable. A renter may have little control over insulation, appliances, windows, or heating and cooling systems. A retiree may need to keep the home at a safe temperature. A family with children depends on lighting, laundry, refrigeration, internet, and basic appliances every day. Then the bill arrives. That is when energy inflation becomes personal. The hidden pressure is not only that electricity prices are rising, it is that electricity demand is changing too. The American power system is being asked to do more. Homes need power for cooling, devices, appliances, and remote work. Businesses need electricity for operations, refrigeration, data systems, manufacturing, and service work. At the same time, the grid is being asked to support growing demand from data centers, transmission upgrades, power plants, and a more complicated energy system. Reuters reported in May 2026 that millions of Americans may be financing electric grid projects before receiving the benefits. As officials upgrade grids to keep up with rising demand, including demand from data centers. That is one of the central tensions. Grid investment may be necessary. More demand requires more infrastructure. Reliability requires maintenance, upgrades, and new capacity. But those costs can reach customers through monthly bills before households feel any direct improvement. For the average family, that can feel like paying more for a system they still worry about. This is where electricity becomes a hidden inflation driver. It is not always visible like a gas station sign. It does not flash on every corner. It does not invite a daily price comparison. But it sits inside almost every household budget. And it can rise quietly. EIA's March 2026 Electric Power Monthly, released in May, showed total average revenue per kilowatt-hour rose 7.2% from March 2025 to 14.18 cents per kilowatt-hour. Residential average revenue rose 10.2% year-over-year. Average revenue per kilowatt-hour is not the same as every household bill. Actual bills depend on usage, region, utility rules, weather, fees, taxes, and rate design. But it is a useful signal of what customers are paying across the power system. And the signal was clear. Residential electricity costs had moved higher. The difficult part is that there is no single cause. It would be misleading to say power bills are rising only because of data centers. Data centers are one pressure point, especially as artificial intelligence and digital infrastructure increase electricity demand. But they are not the whole story. Weather matters. Regional power markets matter. Natural gas prices can matter. Transmission costs matter. Utility capital spending matters. Local regulation matters. Aging infrastructure matters. Demand growth matters. Fuel mix matters. Reliability requirements matter. Electricity is not one national price that moves the same way everywhere. A household in a hot region can face a very different bill from a household in a mild climate. A renter in an inefficient apartment may face a different burden from a homeowner with newer equipment. A family with children at home during the summer may use power differently from someone who spends most of the day away. That is why national averages can miss the strain inside individual homes. For some families, a 5% increase may be manageable. For others, especially households on fixed incomes or already stretched by rent, groceries, and debt, a higher power bill can force trade-offs. A family may delay another purchase, reduce savings, fall behind somewhere else, keep the home warmer in summer or cooler in winter than they would like, avoid using certain appliances at certain times, or simply absorb the cost and have less left over. This is how inflation often works, not as one dramatic shock, but as one bill after another becoming harder to ignore. Businesses face the same pressure. Electricity is an operating cost across almost every industry. Restaurants need refrigeration, lighting, cooking systems, and air conditioning. Grocery stores rely on refrigeration and large facilities. Offices need computers, servers, lighting, and cooling. Manufacturers need power for equipment and production. Small businesses need electricity just to open their doors. When electricity costs rise, businesses have limited choices. They can accept smaller margins. They can raise prices. They can delay hiring or investment. They can try to become more efficient. Larger companies may have more options. Smaller businesses may have fewer. That is how electricity inflation can move through the economy. It starts as a utility bill. Then it becomes part of running a business. Then it can show up indirectly in the prices consumers pay for goods and services. Not every increase passes through directly. Competition, contracts, timing, and margins all matter. But electricity is a real cost, and real costs eventually have to be handled. Reliability adds another layer. FERC's 2026 Summer Energy Market and Electric Reliability Assessment, released in May 2026, said high temperatures and extreme weather were expected to challenge the electric grid. It also noted that drought and low snowpack could limit hydropower. NERC's 2026 Summer Reliability Assessment gave a more balanced picture. Record resource additions had strengthened readiness for summer, but elevated risks remained in some areas. That balance is important. The story is not that the grid is about to fail. The more accurate story is that the grid is under growing pressure, and different regions face different risks. Summer is a major test. Air conditioning can drive electricity demand higher just as temperatures rise. The system needs enough generation, transmission, and reserve capacity to keep power flowing. If weather is extreme, hydropower is limited, or demand is stronger than expected, the stress can become harder to manage. For households, that creates a difficult combination. They may pay more for electricity while still hearing that the system needs more investment to stay reliable. Paying more is one thing. Paying more while being told the grid still needs upgrades is another. Yet that is the position the power sector increasingly faces. The grid has to be maintained. It has to be expanded. It has to handle new demand. It has to prepare for extreme weather. It has to connect new resources. It has to support economic growth. And it has to do all of that while keeping bills affordable. That is the trade-off. America needs a stronger grid. But households are already feeling the cost of the grid they have. The demand side is getting more complicated too. Reuters reported in May 2026 that the rush to build data centers, transmission grids, and power plants was increasing competition for electricians, line workers, and other construction roles. That matters because power infrastructure is not built with money alone. It requires skilled workers, equipment, permits, materials, and time. If labor is scarce, projects can become more expensive or take longer. If demand grows faster than infrastructure, reliability and cost pressures can build. If investment is delayed, the grid may not be ready for future demand. If investment accelerates, some ratepayers may feel higher costs sooner. There is no easy option that removes every trade-off. Slower investment can raise reliability risk. Faster investment can raise bills. More demand can support economic growth. More demand can also strain the grid. Lower costs help households. But underinvestment can create larger problems later. That is why electricity inflation is also an infrastructure story. For years, electricity felt like something that worked quietly in the background. You flipped a switch and the light came on. The bill arrived, and if it was high, the explanation often seemed simple. Hot weather, cold weather, or more usage. Now the power bill is connected to much larger economic forces. Data centers, extreme weather, grid upgrades, labor shortages, transmission needs, regional supply conditions, utility regulation, energy demand, reliability planning. Those forces can eventually end up in what households and businesses pay. That does not mean every bill increase is unfair. It does not mean every grid project is unnecessary. It does not mean one industry is responsible for the whole problem. It means electricity is becoming a larger part of the cost of living story. And because electricity is essential, the pressure is harder to avoid. What happens next depends on several forces moving at once. If EIA's forecast holds, residential electricity prices rise about 5% in 2026 and continue rising in 2027 at a slower pace. That would mean the pressure does not disappear after 1 month of data. If summer temperatures are high, many households could face heavier cooling demand. Higher usage can make bills rise even if rates stay the same. Higher rates and higher usage together can make the monthly bill feel much larger. If grid investments continue, customers in some areas may see more costs built into rates. The exact impact will depend on local utilities, regulators, regional demand, and how costs are assigned. If new resources and infrastructure come online effectively, reliability may improve, and some pressure may be managed. NERC noted that record resource additions had strengthened summer readiness. The system is not standing still, but elevated risks in some areas show why this story remains important. The United States is trying to build and maintain a power system for a more demanding economy, and households are helping pay for it through monthly bills. For American families, the issue is not just a percentage in a report. It is the feeling that another basic cost has become harder to control. A household can compare grocery prices. It can drive less if possible. It can delay a purchase. But electricity sits underneath almost everything. It keeps food cold. It keeps rooms safe in extreme heat. It powers medical devices, phones, computers, appliances, and work-from-home setups. It keeps small businesses open and larger businesses operating. That is why power bills matter. They are not just another line item. They are a measure of how expensive it is to participate in modern life. The strongest way to understand this moment is not to say electricity prices are exploding everywhere or that the grid is failing. The more accurate story is quieter. Electricity is rising faster than headline inflation. Residential power prices are expected to keep increasing. Grid investment is becoming more urgent and more expensive. Demand is growing. Summer reliability risks remain in some areas. And households have limited ways to avoid the cost. That is the hidden inflation pressure, not a single dramatic event. A monthly bill that carries more of the economy inside it. When Americans talk about the cost of living, they usually talk about groceries, gas, rent, and mortgage payments. But the power bill belongs in that conversation too. Because before a household can save, spend freely, or feel secure, it has to keep the lights on. And keeping the lights on is getting more expensive.